Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves. What happens when the world's most scrutinized Duchess, Meghan Markle, steps onto a brightly lit stage and unleashes a scorching accusation against one of the most polarizing figures in modern politics? Donald Trump? What happens when that fire is met not with a whimper, but with a single, razor-sharp sentence from a White House powerhouse, Karoline Levit, that slices through the very air, leaving an entire studio, and indeed the world, utterly speechless? You're about to find out. Before we dive headfirst into this explosive tale of truth, power, and the ultimate showdown, smash that subscribe button, hit the like, and tell us in the comments where are you watching from. Don't miss a single beat of the drama that's about to unfold. The air crackled with anticipation, a low hum of excitement rippling through the studio audience as the lights dimmed to a soft, golden glow. All eyes were fixed on the stage, where Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, made her entrance. She moved with an almost ethereal grace, a confident poise that seemed to defy the intense scrutiny she perpetually faced. Her smile, radiant and practiced, was a beacon, yet a flicker of faint, almost imperceptible tremor danced in her eyes, hinting at the high stakes of the evening. She was here for a promotional interview, yes, but everyone knew this was more than just a typical press junket. Emma Rivera, the show's host, leaned forward, her face illuminated, her voice a warm, inviting current that nonetheless carried an undeniable command. "Meghan," she began, her tone a silken probe, "you've stirred up quite a storm by calling President Trump a misogynist in a recent statement. Can you elaborate on why you chose that label, and what's the core message your new documentary aims to convey?" Meghan adjusted her posture, an elegant, almost regal movement, exuding a polished charm that was her signature. "Thank you, Emma, for having me," she responded, her voice smooth, composed, a carefully modulated instrument. "My documentary, Voices of Freedom, is about giving a voice to women who've been silenced by policies, by prejudice, or by power." Her gaze swept the audience, seeking connection, establishing empathy. "I call Trump a misogynist because his policies, from tariffs that hurt working mothers to cuts in reproductive rights, have undeniably made life harder for millions. Women deserve better." A ripple of enthusiastic applause swelled from a significant portion of the audience, a clear signal of their support. Meghan's eyes softened, drawing strength from this visible endorsement. She continued, her voice gaining a calm yet potent emotional weight. "Just last year, I met a single mother in Ohio, a factory worker who lost her job due to tariffs prioritizing corporate profits over people. She looked me in the eye and said, 'I'm not just fighting for myself, but for my daughter's future.' That's why I speak out," she understood. "This isn't politics, Emma. This is human." Emma nodded, her expression attentive, acknowledging the powerful narrative Meghan was weaving. "A truly powerful story, Meghan. Can you share more about how this project specifically addresses those issues?" Meghan leaned in, her voice growing more resolute, more urgent. "Voices of Freedom tells the stories of women worldwide, workers, teachers, activists. But we don't just highlight struggles. We propose solutions. For example, we've partnered with grassroots organizations to fund job training for women hit hardest by economic policies. Just last month, we helped 200 women in Michigan launch businesses." That's real impact, not empty words. A murmuring wave of approval spread through the audience, a few women in the front row clapping eagerly. Meghan's confidence visibly grew, her gestures becoming more animated, more emphatic. "But local action isn't enough," she declared, her voice rising with conviction. "When a president pushes policies that widen inequality, like cutting funding for women's healthcare, that's a global setback. I have the data. Since Trump's second term began, access to maternal healthcare in rural areas has dropped 15%. That's not progress. That's a betrayal of women's rights." Emma, sensing the moment to pivot, raised a hand, her tone shifting to a more probing, challenging note. "You're painting a grim picture, Meghan. But some argue Trump's policies, like tax cuts, have actually boosted the economy, creating opportunities for female entrepreneurs. What's your take on that?" Meghan's radiant smile stiffened briefly, almost imperceptibly, but her voice held steady, carefully modulated. "Tax cuts sound nice on paper, Emma, but they mostly benefit the ultra-wealthy. For everyday women, it's an illusion." The Small Business Administration reported last year that women-led startups are 30% less likely to secure loans than men. If the economy is truly booming, why are women still left behind? My documentary asks tough questions because someone has to. The audience erupted in applause, a unified roar this time. Meghan's blend of personal stories and compelling data had clearly struck a chord. She glanced quickly across the stage, her gaze briefly catching Karoline Levit, who sat motionless, pen hovering over her notebook, her face utterly unreadable. The contrast was stark, Meghan's passionate conviction versus Karoline's icy, impenetrable calm. A storm was brewing, and the first lightning flash had just hit. Emma Rivers shifted her posture, her gaze, sharp and assessing, now drifting away from Meghan and settling firmly on Karoline Levit. The unspoken question hung heavy in the air, thick with the weight of Meghan's accusations. Meghan, Emma's voice, a seamless transition from warm to subtly probing. You've made a strong case for Voices of Freedom and its message. Before we hear another perspective, what do you ultimately want the audience to take away from your documentary? Meghan exhaled, a soft, almost imperceptible release of breath, her expression softening, perhaps in relief, perhaps in anticipation of the pivot. I want women to feel heard, to know their voices matter, she said, her voice imbued with earnestness. I want policymakers to watch this film and see the human cost of their decisions. And honestly, I want men, fathers, brothers, leaders to join this fight. Equality isn't just a women's issue, it's everyone's. If we can spark that conversation, we've taken a huge step forward. The studio erupted in a roar of applause, even Emma herself smiling, clearly impressed by the Duchess's eloquent appeal. A bold vision, Meghan, Emma declared, her tone now sharpening, the glint in her eye, signaling the shift. Let's see how it holds up under scrutiny. She turned fully to Karoline. Karoline Levit, you've been listening. As White House press secretary, you represent the Trump administration. Meghan has made some serious accusations. What's your response? Karoline set her pen down. The movement was slow, deliberate, each millimeter a measured act of composure. She leaned forward, her eyes, cool and unwavering, locking onto Meghan's with an intensity that seemed to drain the very sound from the room. The audience, sensing the palpable energy shift, stirred, a collective murmur rippling through the rows. Karoline's lips curved into a slight, confident smile, not warm, but brimming with an almost unsettling assurance. Emma, Meghan's film sounds emotional, she began, her voice crisp, cutting through the residual buzz. But let's talk facts. The Trump administration has empowered women in ways she conveniently ignores. I'm here to set the record straight. Murmurs rippled through the audience, some supportive, a low rumble of dissent from others. Meghan's jaw tightened, her initial warmth giving way to a steely resolve. She knew Karoline's reputation, young, unrelenting, and fiercely loyal to Trump. Karoline's voice rang out, clear and sharp, slicing through the lingering noise. Meghan says Trump's policies hurt women, but look at the numbers under this administration. Female unemployment hit record lows, with 2 million new jobs for women since the last term. Our tax cuts put real money in women's pockets, $2,000 per household on average. And those tariffs Meghan mentioned, they protect American jobs, including thousands for women in manufacturing. Karoline Levit, her gaze as sharp as a blade, didn't break eye contact with Meghan for a second. Her voice, though soft, carried the undeniable weight of someone thoroughly prepared, someone armed with data and a relentless purpose. Meghan, face the facts. This administration created millions of jobs, especially for women of color, with unemployment at its lowest in 3 decades. Did you know our small business programs funded over 50,000 women-led startups? You cherry-picked. To paint a distorted picture, the audience split, half clapping fervently, the other half murmuring dissent, a clear line drawn in the sand. Meghan, her lips pressed tight, felt the pressure mounting. She took a deep breath, striving for calm, but her eyes blazed. Karoline, your numbers sound impressive, but they don't tell the whole story. Most of those jobs are temporary, low wage, not enough to support a family. Did you know 60% of women in the service industry live below the poverty line? Trump's policies may help some, but they abandon the most vulnerable. Karoline tilted her head, her faint smile unwavering, a chilling lack of emotion in her gaze. Interesting. You mentioned the vulnerable, Meghan, so why didn't you speak up when past administrations ones you supported cost millions of women their jobs? Or do you only call out what fits your brand? The question landed like a physical blow. The audience gasped, a collective intake of breath. The air in the studio grew thick, heavy with tension. Meghan felt her face flush, a sudden rush of heat, but she quickly regained her composure. Her voice, when it came, was sharp, almost a hiss. Karoline, I'm not here to play political blame games. I speak up for women regardless of party. My film tells the stories of those the system leaves behind, like a nurse in Georgia working 80 hours a week but still unable to afford her child's medication. Trump's public health care cuts hurt people like her. That's what I'm fighting against, Emma. Karoline interjected smoothly, overriding Meghan's momentum. I empathize with those stories. But emotions don't override facts. The Trump administration increased community clinic funding by 20%, helping thousands of women access health care. Meghan cherry-picks personal stories to tug at heartstrings, but she omits these numbers. Why? Because they don't fit the victim narrative she's crafting. The audience erupted into arguments, some shouting support for Karoline, others shaking their heads in anger. Meghan, gripping the armrest tightly, felt her pulse race. Karoline, she retorted, her voice strained. You talk about facts, but you're twisting them. Those clinics are a drop in the bucket. Trump's Medicaid cuts impacted millions of poor women. You can throw out all the numbers you want, but you can't deny his policies prioritize profits over people. Karoline let out a soft, almost imperceptible laugh, the icy sound echoing slightly through the mic. Meghan, she said, her voice laced with a subtle venom, do you really believe you're the hero of women? You sit in a multi-million-dollar mansion, sign Netflix deals, and talk about others' pain. Meanwhile, we're doing real work, like training. Programs that help 10,000 women in Midwestern states find stable jobs. What have you done beyond making films and posting on social media? Karoline's words hit like a punch, a direct strike at Meghan's perceived authenticity. The audience erupted again, some clapping, others jeering, a chaotic symphony of approval and disdain. Meghan felt the blood rush to her head, but she restrained herself, her voice low and sharp, barely contained. Karoline, I don't deny your efforts, but don't diminish my work. I've used my platform to raise millions for organizations supporting women. I've met them, heard their stories, and I'm not sitting in a mansion all day as you think. I'm here for them, not for fame. Emma, ever the maestro of chaos, raised a hand, attempting to control the increasingly heated atmosphere. Both of you are fierce. Meghan, Karoline just questioned your motives. Is there anything you'd like to clarify? Meghan took a deep breath, her eyes locking onto Karoline's, a challenge in their depths. I'm here because I believe in justice. I don't need to justify my life to anyone, especially not to someone parroting Trump's talking points. Karoline, you can rattle off numbers all day, but have you ever actually talked to the women struggling under his policies? Karoline didn't flinch, her eyes flashing with a cold triumph. I've met them, Meghan, and they tell me they want jobs, security, and opportunity, things this administration is delivering. You can tell heart-wrenching stories, but you can't deny we've raised the minimum wage for female workers in 15 states. That's reality, not a documentary. The audience exploded, applause and shouts blending into a whirlwind of sound. Meghan felt the pressure bearing down, but she didn't back off. She leaned forward, her voice brimming with unyielding resolve. Karoline, you talk about reality, but the reality is women are still paid 20% less than men under this administration. The reality is Trump's policies have left thousands of immigrant women without a chance at family reunification. You can call that success, but I call it failure. Karoline shook her head, her voice still calm, but sharp as a blade, delivering the devastating counter. Meghan, you want to tell a story of injustice, but you don't mention the $500 million we've allocated to education programs for immigrant women. You twist the truth to fit your script. Is that the justice you're talking about? The studio atmosphere was like a pressure cooker, ready to burst. The audience buzzed, the tension a tangible force, building inexorably towards the ultimate clash. The studio atmosphere was like a pressure cooker, ready to burst. The audience still buzzing from the heated clash between Meghan Markle and Karoline. Levit swayed between fervent cheers and agitated murmurs. The stage lights, now almost blinding in their intensity, illuminated the two women, starkly distinct in their composure. Meghan, her eyes blazing with conviction, her cheeks flushed, with the heat of the debate, still radiated an undeniable passion. Karoline, in chilling contrast, sat cool as ice, hands clasped tightly on the table, her gaze unwavering, a silent, formidable force. Emma Rivera, sensing the exact moment to push the drama to its zenith, flashed a sly, almost playful smile. Meghan. Karoline, you've both thrown heavy punches, Emma began, her voice smooth but laced with a delicious sharpness. But I want to pivot a bit. Meghan, you've meticulously built an image as a champion for women, a vocal advocate for the voiceless. Yet, some critics argue you're using these deeply personal social issues as a tool to polish your personal brand, a strategic move within your public persona. How do you respond to the idea that this is just part of your personal brand? The question struck Meghan like an arrow, aimed directly at the heart of her public identity. The audience fell silent, a few gasping softly, awaiting her response. Meghan felt a jolt run down her spine, a cold awareness of the trap laid before her, but she quickly regained composure, sitting upright, her spine rigid. Her voice, when it came, was low and steady, a testament to her practiced resilience. Emma. I understand why some might think that. When you're a public figure, every action, every statement is scrutinized, twisted, analyzed. But I assure you, I'm not here to build a brand. I use my voice to shine a light on the injustices women face every single day. Every dollar from my documentary is reinvested into programs supporting women, like scholarships for young girls in underserved communities. This isn't about me. It's about them. Scattered applause broke out, some nodding in agreement, clearly swayed by her earnestness. But Karoline, her lips curling into a thin, knowing smile, was not about to let the moment pass. She leaned forward, her voice smooth, almost silken, but cutting like a razor. Meghan, it's admirable that you talk about helping women, but let's be honest. You've made millions from Netflix and Spotify deals, largely by exploiting personal stories and royal family drama. How can we truly trust that this isn't simply a shrewd business strategy when you consistently keep turning private issues into public content? Karoline's words poured fuel on the fire. The audience roared, some cheering in fervent support, others shaking their heads in indignant dissent. Meghan felt her chest tighten, a familiar surge of defensiveness, but she refused to let emotion take over. She looked straight at Karoline, her gaze unflinching, a challenge in her eyes. Karoline, I'm not going to sit here and justify my life choices to you. I have used my platform, yes, to raise millions for charities, and I'm proud of that work. Meanwhile, you stand there defending a president with a documented history of controversial statements about women. Have you ever asked yourself if you're truly on the right side of history? Meghan's counterattack sent the audience into a fresh frenzy, applause mixing with shouts, a chaotic symphony of opposing viewpoints. Emma raised her hand, trying to rein in the escalating chaos. Hold on. Karoline, Meghan just posed a big question. Do you want to respond? Karoline didn't blink. Her voice remained calm, almost unnervingly so, but laced with a formidable sharpness. Meghan, you want to pivot to President Trump, but I'm talking about you. You claim to fight for women, but when you share private details about your family from your parents to your in-laws on global television, do you truly believe that inspires women? Or does it just hurt your loved ones while you profit? The audience gasped, a collective shock rippling through the room. The air grew heavy, thick with the weight of Karoline's personal jab. Meghan felt a surge of raw anger, hot and stinging, but she held it back, a tight rein on her composure. Her voice, when she spoke, was low and forceful, vibrating with controlled fury. Karoline, you know nothing about my family or what I've been through. I share my story to help others feel less alone, to show that even in tough times, they can move forward. I don't do it for money. I do it because I believe honesty can change lives. Meghan, you talk about honesty, Emma interjected, her tone now more nuanced, but Karoline raised a point. Airing family stories can cause pain. Have you ever considered keeping those things private? If that hurts anyone? Meghan's eyes narrowed slightly. If that hurts anyone, I'm sorry, but the truth isn't always comfortable. The audience surprisingly applauded, some even standing to cheer Karoline, a clear shift in allegiance. Karoline, for the first time, showed a flicker of irritation, a tightening around her eyes, but quickly masked it with a cold, triumphant smile. Meghan, you talk about truth, but your truth seems one-sided. You've written books, made films, and gone on TV to talk about the injustices your family caused. But have you ever asked yourself if you're hurting the women in your own family, like your mother-in-law or sister-in-law? Karoline's question cut like a knife, a precise and brutal incision into Meghan's most guarded vulnerabilities. The audience fell silent, completely captivated, awaiting Meghan's response. Her throat felt dry, a sudden constriction, but she refused to sink. Karoline, I'm not here to argue about my family. I'm here to talk about the millions of women the system leaves behind. If you want to talk truth, let's talk about how your administration cut funding for domestic violence programs. That's the real issue, not family drama, Emma interjected, her voice curious, yet undeniably provocative. Karoline, Meghan just shifted back to policy. Do you want to return to that, or keep digging into personal motives? Karoline tilted her head, her eyes flashing with a dangerous glint. Emma, I'm happy to talk policy, but I think the audience deserves the truth about Meghan's motives. She's built an image as an activist, but she's also a businesswoman profiting from emotional stories. That's not wrong, but let's call it what it is. The intensity in the room continued to build, a palpable pressure, as the personal attacks gave way to a deeper, more profound questioning of authenticity. Meghan, her lips pressed tight, her eyes blazing with an unyielding fire, held her ground. Karoline, in stark contrast, sat upright, hands resting lightly on the table, her face cool, composed, but her eyes glinting with a dangerous confidence. Emma Rivera, with a half-playful, half-serious smile, knew this was the moment. The tension was a living thing in the studio, a coiled spring ready to unleash. Meghan, Emma began, her voice a deliberate prod, you just defended sharing your personal story, emphasizing it's about justice and helping others. But I want to offer another angle. Some say your constant public discussion of these issues, from the royal family to politics, isn't just speaking out, but a calculated way to stay in the spotlight. Care to clarify? The question landed like a ticking bomb. The audience hushed, a few murmurs breaking through the silence. Meghan felt a chill run through her, a familiar weight of cynicism. She quickly steadied herself, her shoulders squaring. Her voice, when she spoke, was low but powerful, resonating with a deep conviction. Emma, I'm not chasing the spotlight. I've lived under it since I was an actress, and I know how empty it is. I speak out because I believe silence equals accepting injustice. If I don't address what I see, from gender inequality to harmful policies, I'm failing the women who trust me, the women who look to me to use this platform. Scattered applause broke out, some nodding in agreement, a fragile resurgence of support. Emma nodded slightly, but her gaze swiftly shifted back to Karoline. Karoline, you've consistently questioned Meghan's motives. What do you make of her response? Karoline leaned forward, her eyes locked on Meghan, her voice smooth, almost too calm, but sharp as a blade. Meghan, I respect your passion, but let's be frank. You talk about justice, but you've turned your personal story into a business. You sell books, make documentaries, and now criticize President Trump to promote your new project. If you truly cared about women, why not work quietly, like thousands of other tireless activists, instead of turning everything into a public performance? Karoline's words swept through the room like a cold wind, a chilling accusation of performativity. The audience gasped, some cheering in a surge of agreement, others shaking their heads in anger. Meghan felt her heart pound, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs, but she refused to back down. She leaned forward, eyes blazing, a fire meeting. Ice, Karoline, you call my work a performance? I've spent years working with charities, meeting women fighting to survive. I don't just talk, I act. Meanwhile, you stand there defending a president whose statements have insulted women countless times. How can you talk about justice when you work for him? The audience erupted, applause mixing with shouts, a cacophony of support and outrage. Emma raised her hand, trying to control the chaotic energy. Meghan, that's a heavy accusation. Karoline, do you want to respond? Karoline didn't blink. Her voice remained calm, almost unnervingly so, but carrying a formidable strength that cut through the noise. Meghan, you want to pivot to President Trump, but I'm talking about consistency. You talk about women being insulted, but you stayed silent when others, from politicians to the media, attacked women in this administration, including me. You only speak up when it fits your narrative. Is that justice or opportunism? Karoline's question made the audience gasp, the air growing thick, heavy with the weight of her insinuation. Meghan felt a surge of anger so potent it made her tremble, but she restrained herself, her voice sharp, brittle with indignation. Karoline, I don't pick moments to speak out. I address what I see as wrong. Trump isn't just a politician. He's the leader, and his policies hurt women. If you think I'm seizing opportunities, you're underestimating why I'm here. Emma raised an eyebrow, clearly delighted with the escalating tension. Meghan, Karoline, neither of you is backing down. But, Meghan, I want to push further. You just said Trump hurts women. Can you make a clear statement, something you believe is the core of the issue? Meghan took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping the audience, seeking connection, a silent plea for understanding. Her voice rang out, clear and resolute. Trump isn't just an enemy of women. He's a threat to society's progress. His policies, from cutting women's education to restricting personal freedom, set us back decades. I'm here to say we can't let that happen. The audience exploded. Half stood to clap, a roaring wave of support. The other half jeered, their disapproval a harsh counterpoint. The room felt like a storm, a tempest of conflicting emotions, and Emma had to raise her voice to cut through the deafening noise. Meghan, that's a bold statement. Karoline, what's your response? Karoline looked straight at Meghan, her voice ringing like a bell, cutting through the chaos with devastating precision. Meghan, you call President Trump an enemy of women, but you stayed silent when millions of women were harmed by policies you didn't dare challenge. So who are you really fighting for? The words hit the room like a lightning bolt, striking with pinpoint accuracy. The audience froze, a collective intake of breath, murmurs spreading like wildfire. Meghan felt her face pale, a sudden chilling dread, her mind reeling. Karoline's brief but piercing remark had struck a vulnerability she hadn't anticipated. A raw nerve exposed. She opened her mouth, the words caught in her throat. Karoline, you're twisting the truth. I've always fought for women, no matter the administration. Karoline shook her head, her eyes never leaving Meghan's, a cold, triumphant glint in their depths. Meghan, you talk about fighting, but you pick battles that suit your image. Where were you when past economic policies hurt women? When the media attacked women in this administration? What did you say? You only speak up when it makes you shine. The audience erupted again, shouts and applause blending into a deafening roar. Meghan, her eyes blazing with indignation, stood up, preparing to leave the stage. I'm not here to be personally attacked. I came to talk about women, not myself. Emma quickly intervened, her voice urgent, cutting through the maelstrom. Meghan, please stay. The audience wants to hear both sides. Karoline, you just made a powerful statement. Care to elaborate? Karoline, with an almost imperceptible smirk, sat down, her voice returning to its calm, unyielding strength. Emma, I just want the truth to be told. Meghan has the right to make films and write books. But when she criticizes others, she needs to be ready for scrutiny. Women deserve honesty, not curated stories. The audience cheered, some standing, a clear division solidifying. Meghan, her hands trembling slightly, slowly sat back down, her eyes still blazing, a silent promise of defiance. Karoline, she managed, her voice strained, you can question me, but don't pretend you're fighting for women. You work for someone who's hurt them. The stage was a powder keg, and the fuse was burning fast. The room still shook from Karoline Levit's razor-sharp remark, her words slicing through the air like a blade. Meghan, you call President Trump an enemy of women, but you stayed silent when millions of women were harmed by policies you didn't dare challenge. So who are you really fighting for? The audience's shouts, applause, and murmurs blended into an emotional whirlwind. Meghan Markle, who had stood to leave the stage, felt her heart pounding, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. But Emma's piercing gaze, coupled with the urgent cries of "stay" from the crew and segments of the audience, made her hesitate. She took a deep breath, a visible effort to compose herself, and slowly sat back down, her eyes burning with a renewed, defiant resolve. Karoline, maintaining her composure with a cold, almost imperceptible smile, cast a brief glance at Meghan, a hint of weariness betraying her otherwise unyielding fad. Emma, like a masterful director, knew this was the pivotal moment to keep viewers glued to their screens. Meghan, Karoline, thank you both for bringing such fire to this debate, Emma began, her voice both soothing and subtly provocative, acknowledging the spectacle she had orchestrated. Meghan looked out at the audience, their faces a kaleidoscope of emotions, ranging from fiercely supportive to openly skeptical. She felt a surge of strength from deep within, a familiar wellspring she tapped into when confronting injustice. Her voice, low but powerful, resonated through the tense silence. Ladies and gentlemen, Karoline can question me, but she can't deny my heart. I want to share a story. The studio fell silent, anticipating another deeply personal narrative. Last year, I met Maria, an immigrant woman in Texas who lost her daughter because she couldn't afford medicine due to healthcare subsidy cuts. Maria told me, I just want someone to see me, to see my pain. I'm here for Maria, for women like her, not for fame or profit. Meghan's words swept through the room like a warm breeze, a stark contrast to the icy accusations that had preceded them. The audience softened, some wiping away tears, a group of women in the front row rising to applaud, sparking a wave of renewed support. Meghan continued, her gaze sweeping over Karoline, not challenging, but steadfast. Karoline, you say I stayed silent on other injustices, but I've worked with organizations supporting immigrant women for years, raising millions so they can access education and healthcare. I don't pick battles that fit, I choose the ones that matter. The audience roared, applause echoing through the studio. Emma nodded, her eyes glinting with a flicker of admiration. Meghan, that was a deeply emotional response. Karoline, what do you think of Meghan's story and her reply? For the first time, Karoline showed a flicker of genuine hesitation, her fingers tapping lightly on the table as if calculating her next move. Her voice remained sharp, but tinged with a cautious edge. Meghan, your story is moving, and I don't doubt your sincerity, but emotion can't replace accountability. You talk about helping women, but when you publicly criticize President Trump, you create division. Our administration has allocated $300 million to healthcare programs for immigrant women. Those efforts don't make it into your story. Why? Karoline, I don't deny those efforts, but they're just a surface fix, Meghan countered, her voice gaining strength. Your administration cut Medicaid, leaving millions of women like Maria without long-term care. I'm not here to divide, but to speak truth. And the truth is, your numbers can't hide the stories that go unheard. The audience applauded, but dissenting voices rose from one corner, a last stand against the emotional tide. Emma, sensing an opportunity, jumped in with a curious tone. Meghan, Karoline, you both talk about truth, but it seems you each have a different lens. Karoline, Meghan says you hide stories. Want to respond? Karoline sat up straight, her eyes flashing with renewed resolve. Emma, I'm not hiding anything. I work with women's communities daily, from rural to urban. They tell me they want security, jobs, and opportunity, things the Trump administration is delivering. Meghan chooses sad stories to stir emotion, but she doesn't mention the women who've escaped poverty through our programs. That's the truth she overlooks. Karoline's words split the audience, some cheering, others shaking their heads. Meghan felt the pressure, but refused to be swept away. She looked straight at Karoline, her voice sharp yet brimming with raw emotion. Karoline, I don't choose which stories to tell. I share what I see, what I hear from women who are struggling. If you think I'm just stirring emotion, you're underestimating the power of those stories. They're not just feelings, they're truth. They're the drive for change. The audience erupted, applause thundering. Emma, with a satisfied smile, pivoted to cool the tension. Both of you have brought powerful perspectives. Let's shift the mood a bit. Meghan, Karoline, I want to ask about women's roles in media. How do we ensure women's voices are heard without being distorted? Meghan seized the opportunity, her voice softening, but still compelling. Emma, the media can be an ally or an enemy. Women need to tell their own stories, not be shaped by sensational headlines. I learned that through years of being scrutinized by the press. That's why I created Voices of Freedom so women can speak without distortion. We need more platforms, more voices and less judgment. Karoline, her eyes briefly betraying a flicker of rigidity, responded. Meghan, I agree women need to be heard. But when you use the media to criticize others, like President Trump, you contribute to that distortion. I believe women are inspired by action, not arguments. Karoline's words drew nods from some audience members, but Meghan didn't let her take the upper hand. She stood, her voice ringing like a final speech, a call to arms. Karoline, Emma, audience. I'm not here to argue, but to unite. Women don't need more division. We need to stand together. I fight not for fame, but for those without a voice. If we can agree on that, we've made a big step forward. The audience rose, cheering, applause thundering through the studio. Emma, her eyes gleaming with triumph, wrapped up the segment. Meghan, Karoline, you've delivered an explosive debate. Audience, we'll be back with more drama. Don't go anywhere. As the stage lights dimmed and the show broke for commercial, the room buzzed like a furnace. The clash between Meghan Markle and Karoline Levit left a deep rift among the audience, from fervent cheers to skeptical glances. Meghan, with her unifying final speech, regained some support, but Karoline's piercing line, "Meghan, you call President Trump an enemy of women, but you stayed silent when millions of women were harmed by policies you didn't dare challenge. So who are you really fighting for?" Lingered like smoldering embers, ready to ignite online. ASM Rivera smiled and announced the show's return. The outside world was already trembling. Within minutes of the broadcast, social media exploded. One user wrote, "Karoline just destroyed Meghan with one sentence. Who still believes she's fighting for women?" The post racked up thousands of shares, paired with memes of Meghan's stunned expression. But Meghan's supporters fought back just as fiercely. Another account posted, "Meghan stands up for the voiceless. Karoline's just Trump's mouthpiece," alongside a video of Meghan's final speech, amassing millions of views. Online forums split into two camps, fiercely debating who won. Backstage, Meghan sat in the green room, clutching a water bottle, her gaze distant. She sensed the brewing media storm, as she had during countless past moments under scrutiny. Harry, her husband, texted, "You did great. I'm proud of you. Don't let them shake you." Meghan gave a faint, weary smile, but deep down, she knew Karoline's remark had hit a vulnerable spot she couldn't ignore. She wondered if she had, as Karoline accused, been selective in her battles. Meanwhile, in a Washington, D.C. office, Karoline received a call. "Great job, Karoline," a senior advisor enthused. "That line's going viral. You put Meghan on the ropes." Karoline nodded, but her eyes betrayed a hint of tension. She knew she'd scored a point, but online criticism was mounting. One post called her Trump's soulless mouthpiece, paired with a video of her cold smile while questioning Meghan. Others hailed her as a hero of truth, leaving her caught between praise and attack. Major media outlets quickly piled on. A new York Times article titled, "Meghan Markle versus Karoline Levit, a battle over truth or spotlight," analyzed that both made valid points, but Karoline's line had shaken Meghan's activist image. Meanwhile, Fox News published, "Karoline Levit schools Meghan on honesty," emphasizing that Meghan was exposed for selective advocacy. In contrast, Vogue ran a short interview with a feminist activist who praised Meghan for daring to confront power and sharing stories like Maria's. On social media, a prominent account with millions of followers posted, "Meghan talks about unity, but Karoline's right. She only speaks up when it makes her shine. Who's really caring about women?" The post was met with a fierce reply, "Karoline works for Trump, who's insulted women countless times. What gives her the right to criticize Meghan?" The online argument raged for hours, with related hashtags dominating trending lists. In California, Meghan and her team held an emergency meeting to manage the crisis. A peer advisor suggested, "We should post on Instagram highlighting Maria's story and your charitable projects. It'll win back goodwill." Meghan nodded, but she wanted something bigger, something bolder. She decided to post a short video, filmed at Archwell's office. In it she said, "Tonight I was challenged, but I don't regret speaking out. I fight for women like Maria, like millions of others. Together, we can make change." The video quickly racked up millions of views, but also drew mixed comments, reflecting the ongoing division. On the other side, Karoline appeared in a brief interview on a conservative TV channel, reinforcing her stance. "I didn't personally attack Meghan," she said, her voice resolute. "I just want the truth told. Women deserve honest leaders, not curated stories." Her words were cheered by Trump supporters, but criticized as lacking empathy by others. The media storm didn't stop in the US. British outlets like The Guardian and Daily Mail jumped in, with Daily Mail headlining, "Meghan flops in TV showdown with Trump spokeswomen." Meanwhile, The Guardian wrote, "Meghan Markle, activist or media victim?" These articles revived old controversies about Meghan from her royal exit, making her feel besieged from all sides. When the Spotlight with Emma Rivera aired again the next night, the clip of Karoline's line had hit tens of millions of views. On YouTube, Emma, with professional flair, opened by revisiting the climax. Last night, we witnessed a TV moment that redefined drama. The show's ratings soared, and Emma became a focal point, with articles praising her for orchestrating a historic showdown. The media storm from the spotlight eventually calmed, but the echoes of the clash between Meghan Markle and Karoline Levit lingered. Meghan, though regaining goodwill with her emotional story, carried a new wound. Doubts about her motives now clung like a shadow. Karoline, celebrated in Trump's administration, also faced scrutiny. Was she just a spokesperson, or did she truly believe in the cause? The debate had ripped open a raw nerve, forcing both women and their audiences to confront uncomfortable truths about power, perception, and the elusive nature of authenticity in the relentless glare of the public eye, and that's how a single sentence can ignite a global firestorm. The battle between Meghan Markle and Karoline Levit wasn't just a TV debate. It was a mirror reflecting the deepest divisions of our time. What did you think? Who truly won this clash of titans? Like this story, share it with your friends, leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the untold stories behind the headlines.